Everyone, so excited for all of you joining, and we're going to talk more about ESG program management, maturing your program. So jumping right in, first, we have evolving stakeholder expectations. Certainly regulators, legislators that are passing new requirements or disclosure requirements are a stakeholder for us to look out for. But also important to keep in mind are customers that we have, employees that work in our businesses, investors that we may want to attract or retain, as well as increasingly partners that we work with, other stakeholders in our supply chain, for example, as well as the local communities that we operate in, and where we have our customers and our employees, right? And we can see that a vast majority of consumers really expect corporations to be actively shaping ESG best practices. So this comes from some PwC research. Great stat that to me says consumers aren't really adopting the sit back and wait to see what might be required of companies someday or what might be legislated. They're looking to companies to really set that best practice and shape ESG practices for themselves. The next, and this is key to remember for, again, the proposed rules from the SEC, your ESG teams are going to be asked to provide assurances that ESG data is accurate, that it's ready for an external audit. So things like data centralization, evidence collection, having audit logs are going to be critical. But more than half of executives are reporting that the data availability that they have is really a challenge that they're seeing. They're not sure if they can rely on the accuracy of data. And today it might be risk to reputation, it might be risk of greenwashing, but tomorrow it could have major consequences for compliance with certain laws and legislation and damage to your reputation as well. Next, we're seeing ESG becoming more and more a key part of risk management and in turn kind of embedded in business strategy. So making sure that you're prioritizing ESG as part of your risk management program. That means you're able to advise the business about ESG risks and opportunities. And from some Gartner research, last year, there was a 100% increase in boards that were prioritizing the category of ESG health and sustainability. So obviously it has board members' attention. It's becoming increasingly embedded throughout the business. So when we think about these driving factors, meeting expectations that our stakeholders have, preparing for the inevitable external audit of our ESG data, and really trying to embed ESG throughout your business, risk management as a big driver of that. What does it look like, and how do we think about assessing where a company is in maturity for their ESG program management? And first, I wanted to share this ESG Program Management Lifecycle. And although on the slide it's presented in a line and is numbered, we rarely see someone follow his exact path. This is a consensus of different activities, different categories that make up an overall ESG program. So to help understand some of the typical elements that we see that we asked about as well in the survey that you'll see in the results of our ESG Program Management Maturity Survey, we first see looking at materiality assessments. So what ESG topics are important based on those assessments? How are you engaging stakeholders? And Arsh, can you help us define materiality assessments and what they're used for?
Yeah, absolutely. At a high level, materiality assessment is a process that helps company organizations identify and prioritize the most relevant ESG factors for their business and stakeholders. And companies really utilize this process to ensure that they're focusing their efforts on the issues that have the greatest potential impact on their sustainability, financial performance, and reputations. And in turn, it helps those teams run a more effective ESG program.
Absolutely. So no two materiality assessments or levels of importance maybe would look the same for different companies. It would vary widely for different industries and verticals. The next step you want to do is, based on that materiality, based on what's important for your organization, for your business, identify any reporting frameworks or important topics in the ESG universe to track that will help kind of reflect what's important for your business. So Arsh, are there any common frameworks that you can mention that you come across often? I know this was a question that came in for registration on what frameworks are useful, what frameworks are the best, how do I choose my framework? So
Yeah, certainly. And I think I'm about to throw a lot of alphabet soup around here now. But in my experience working with ESG across industries and regions, there are several frameworks that are frequently used to guide and measure ESG performance. There's GRI, Global Reporting Initiative, which provides comprehensive sustainability reporting standards. SASB, which is a Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, and that one offers industry-specific ESG metrics that are more focused on financial materiality. TCFD, the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, which helps organizations assess and report on climate-related risks and opportunities. So those are the three most common ones that I encounter. But I've also worked with companies that align with the UN SDGs, which are the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals. And they really offer a global framework for addressing key social, economic, and environmental challenges. And I'll mention one more, and that's the Carbon Disclosure Project, CDP, which can be considered a framework and a rating provider. But CDP really enables organizations to measure and manage their environmental impacts. And what I've noticed is that these frameworks are sometimes used individually, but more often they're used in combination. And that all depends on an organization's specific needs and what their objectives are.
Awesome. So obviously a lot of different frameworks to choose from, but a lot to kind of mix and match to align with the materiality for your organization and what you're looking to accomplish with your ESG program. Next, we have collect all the ESG data and metrics. So this can come from internal, external sources as required by the frameworks selected. And again, what should be material to your business. You'll also want to establish a baseline. So a lot of teams that we work with maybe understand what is material, have some frameworks, have collected data, but that is very time consuming. So they haven't yet reach the next step of kind of going in, doing a baseline, understanding where they want to go and setting goals with the analysis of their data. That's a big next step where a lot of people are not, I wouldn't say stuck, but have found themselves wondering how they can move the needle forward because collecting your data and understanding what's material is such a big chunk of getting started. You'll also want to make sure your data is accurate, that you know where it's coming from, that it's ready for any kind of public disclosures or commitments that you're looking to make. And then you'll want to create your action plan. So operationalize this program, put it to work. You'll have to get buy-in from stakeholders and perhaps executive sponsors for you to have the impact. And again, embed ESG and what you want to do throughout your organization. And then, of course, we're going to want to monitor whether it's month over month, quarter over quarter, year over year, again, depending on what's material for your business. Making sure you're flagging any risks, mitigation needs, communicate the progress to get that buy-in and continue that buy-in from internal stakeholders in your business and keep them updated, hopefully, on the great progress and impact that your organization is making. So with that and looking at the elements of a program, there's obviously a lot that you could be doing. Maybe you've done a materiality assessment, but the last one you did was 3 years ago, and you're not really sure when the next one will be. Or maybe you've started collecting ESG data, but you're really only looking at certain area, maybe on the environmental impact of your business, and you haven't really delved into the S and the G as of yet. So when we break it down, we've really defined 4 different areas where we feel we can measure competencies in ESG and really assess maturity of an ESG program. So the first we look at is ESG investment and processes. So what investments has your organization made in things like ESG, headcount, in establishing processes that are repeatable and scalable, and also in technology that you may have invested in to help aid these processes and the ESG sustainability teams that you have. Next, we take a look at ESG breadth and depth. Every time I have to say that in front of an audience, I think we should have gone with the alternative name, but I think this is the most descriptive. There's obviously a lot of different topics and things your organization can focus on across the E, the S, and the G. So what is your breadth in covering those topics? And what is the depth that you're going into in each of those? Are you looking at things like your carbon footprint, but in addition, the water and the energy, maybe the renewable energy sources that you're using, any biodiversity impacts, things like that. So what are you looking at and how deep are you going into those different areas? And this also looks at things like how are you engaging with your stakeholders? There are many different stakeholders, just like there are many different topics across ESG. Are you looking maybe just at your customers as stakeholders, or are you actually diving deep and looking at your employees, your customers, your community, and getting their input to determine what's material for your business as well? The next category or area that we look at is around reporting and disclosures. So have you published a sustainability report? What have you publicly disclosed? Have you made any commitments or shared ratings publicly? What frameworks are you aligning to? Those type of things. And next, we have governance and controls. So how is your organization managing compliance, audits, data governance to ensure the accuracy of the information that you're putting into those reports? And again, sharing out with your stakeholders. And then based on the answers to these 4 categories of questions, we have rated the survey respondents and be able to map out where they fall for each of those categories in fundamental, efficient, strategic, or what we've called groundbreaking categories. So when you look at fundamental, this is the very baseline. You may be checking the box on some compliance. You may be able to provide ESG data on an as-needed basis. And when you move up to efficiency, this is where you have more of a defined, managed process for collecting your ESG data. You may be delving into reporting and disclosures. And then when you move into strategic, this is where we start to see different activities and investment levels that indicate that your ESG program is seen as a competitive differentiator, a way to differentiate yourself in the market with the different stakeholders that you have. And you're starting to embed ESG thinking and strategies throughout your organization. So again, with risk management, but also your internal audit teams may be involved, investor relations, maybe even marketing or PR is involved. And they're all kind of starting to think of things with an ESG lens. And then when we move into a groundbreaking category, this is really where we see companies and organizations that are setting the standard in these 4 different categories. They have new ideas. They have a really strong audit or control process. A lot of thought has gone into the governance, and they have kind of a long-term plan to execute and operationalize their ESG program. And then finally, I'm going to turn it over to Arsh. Can you talk a little bit about the different use cases that people look to solve for as they're looking to mature their ESG program management?
Yeah, absolutely. There are just plethora of reasons how technology can help. But technology plays such a crucial role in helping companies manage their ESG programs more effectively. For starters, it helps simplify data management by streamlining the collection and aggregation and validation of data from various sources, which not only save time, but it also improves accuracy. And then, beyond data management, technology helps organizations analyze ESG data, uncovering trends and insights that can inform smarter strategic decisions. It can also support benchmarking and goal setting by allowing companies to track their progress and compare their performance to industry peers or relevant standards. And, when it comes to reporting and disclosure, technology can make it easier to create consistent and transparent reports that align with the different ESG frameworks. And lastly, these digital tools foster really, really good collaboration and stakeholder engagement. It'll help centralize communication, and also you can ensure that everyone in the organization is on the same page when it comes to ESG goals and initiatives. So really, by embracing technology, companies can not only streamline their ESG management processes, but they can also make more informed decisions that ultimately lead to more impactful sustainability outcomes, which is really the end goal. There are a number of ways, that technology can help.
So with that, we are unfortunately right just about out of time. Arsh, thank you so much for your expertise and sharing so many great stories about working with ESG teams and not ESG teams that own ESG. It's great to have your insights